Hello, and welcome to another episode of Casting Views, a podcast hosted by me, Lou, and
Me, Dan.
it's a podcast where we talk about really anything and everything, something that might have interested us, something that's probably been in the news, usually stuff that's wound us up, really, isn't it? To be fair. And this episode, we've got some very special guests with us. We've got Shayne and Max from the Shayne and I podcast. Woo!
Hey, hello. Good to be here. Thanks for having us.
Very good to have you. What
Sorry, I was going to say, I'm going to say it now because I was saying beforehand. No, thank you for coming on. You two you've been great supporters of us on social media and through Good Pods. So no, I couldn't wait to get you on when the opportunity arose. So yeah, no, welcome.
Yeah, it's cool.
I'm gonna have to give Shayne all the credit there. I abhor social media, but Shayne's the man.
See,
We've
now
got the
that's
same.
kind of, the same dynamic. I'm actually not on really any social medias at all. I got rid of my Instagram, my Twitter, my TikTok. The only thing I keep is my Facebook, but that's only because older people in my family like to look at stuff and they just don't know how to use it.
So I'm social media.
Yeah, so I'm very much like disconnected from the world, which is a nice preamble. But prior to getting into the topic of this episode,
Yeah.
I will say we do have a promo to run from some of our podcast friends, and the promo is from the lovely ladies at Sugar Coated Murder.
Hey, Ann Barner.
Hey, Karen Beatty.
We need a promo. You know, like where we talk about what we do on our podcast.
On our sugar-coated murder podcast, like how we love to bake and talk about murder.
That's what we need to talk about.
There you go.
I think we've talked about it. Y'all find us on all your favorite listening apps.
Stay sweet,
And don't murder.
because if you kill people,
We will talk about you.
And we're back. I love how it's a really seamless transition when people
Seamless,
listen to this.
Yeah.
Seamless
Yeah,
transition. And then what we do is we actually just awkwardly pause for about 4 seconds. It's brilliant. So, the topic of this week's episode is going to be on Y2K. But prior to getting into that, I'm going to hand over Shayne and Max. And what we're going to do is we're just going to let you have a little bit of a chat about your podcast. Tell us what you do. Tell our viewers how you do it, how you got into it, why you started, all of that. And I'll hand over to you guys.
All right, sure. My name is Shayne,
I'm Max.
and we co-host.
We co-host.
We're the
Shayne
hostesses.
and I.
We're not the hostesses. We're the hosts.
We're the hosts.
Shayne and I podcast.
We're the hosts with the most.
Yes.
Of the Shayne and I podcast.
We're the
Yeah.
podcast about nothing that makes you think of something. See, I got it
What
this
a
time.
what a great
Yeah.
thing, huh?
Yeah. What else? We were a YouTube channel for a long time, and we decided we didn't want to do YouTube anymore, and we got into podcasting from that. Kind of right?
Yeah, that's about it.
And we've been a podcast for probably just an audio formatted podcast for probably about a year and a half now, almost 2 years.
It's been, we were still making some video stuff a couple of years, a year and a half.
Yeah, I want to say like 2 years we've been doing strictly podcasts.
All right, yeah. All right, cool.
Strictly audio.
Sweet.
So yeah, we've been doing that, and we kind of get on the microphone and just kind of do what I guess it's improv, right? We just
more or less, we just sort of we will often come with a topic idea, and it will turn into just anything else.
Yeah.
And that's that. Now you guys.
That's the best conversations, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
It's like I was talking about earlier. Like when we were doing YouTube, you'd always have to like come up with a topic that you could talk. At least for what we were doing, it was a topic that you could talk about within 8 minutes, right? Or 10 minutes. You didn't want to get past the 10-minute mark in YouTube. And
Honestly, for our format, 5 minutes was really ideal.
Yeah.
And we often stretched it out to 15.
yeah, and it just got to the point where it just wasn't. It was just always kind of reaching for a topic. Like after doing that for 2 years, it kind of got to the point where you're kind of like, okay, we're kind of redundant on the topics that we're doing.
Yeah,
Like,
we were doing a lot of really bad like top 10 stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to be like a top 10 channel. Like that's not what we want. And I kind of felt like at the age point we were at, like nobody wants to see a couple older dudes doing YouTube anyway, So I was just kind of like, wait, this podcasting thing. And I've always wanted.
Speak for yourself. I'm a young 36.
All right, you're a young 36. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm the old guy. Nobody wanted to see an old guy like me. How about that?
I get that.
And I kind of had the idea in my head anyway from the beginning that I wanted it to be a podcast. And so when I got the opportunity to kind of the guy that was producing our show moved, and the guy that was producing the show and doing the camera stuff for us moved, and it was kind of the perfect opportunity to kind of get into just doing podcasting, and it seemed easier than YouTube because you didn't have to worry about view counts or anything like that, and you could just kind of roll with it. And to me, audio only podcasts, there's a way more freedom in it to me, and it's way more easier to be entertaining.
And as you guys can tell, and for the listener, we have a video link with Dan and Lou here. You can't see that, but our end, Shayne and I's end, is just complete crap. I mean, you can see almost half of my face right now, and a good half of Shayne's face.
There, I'm in all the way.
The lighting's just nothing, and
Yeah, way to let down the audience.
Well, no, I'm saying this to say, audio is our
It's our forte.
That's our strength,
Yeah.
really. Yeah.
But Lou and I actually still haven't actually done one in the same room yet, have we? We've done these
Yeah,
all
no, we
remotely.
haven't,
We've just got
yeah.
into the groove of doing it like this, and even though we're only 20 minutes
Yeah,
apart,
I was just
That's
about to say,
funny.
we're literally like 15 minutes up the road, but we're like, no, we're lazy because then I can do this like in my boxes. Like,
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I mean, Max and I literally live. It's the same deal. We live literally. I live literally 15 minutes away. And,
I mean, if the lights are right, I can get to your house in 5 minutes.
yeah, exactly. And it's literally It's literally always been easier, for at least for me, to like. I'm more of a. Just so it's always been easier to like record together. Like I've never wanted to like do this with anybody else. Like I kind of have a good rapport with Max, and more importantly, when we're in person, it's easier to get into the groove of like the comedy and the timing. And that's like the whole thing with our show. It's like we want people to laugh, and I think we get into better timing with that when we're in person.
Definitely.
well, I actually have to say, I really love like the description that you've got on your website just about the two of you, because I think it's brilliant. And I was actually just going to read it out just so that everybody knew and could hear it, because I think it's brilliant.
I got to give credit to where credit's due on that one, though. We had our description before was just said something like a podcast about stuff and things or something like that, like a while ago. And then I talked to Tanner Campbell, the guy that does podcast. His show used to be called Podcasting Sucks, and now it's called Good Morning Podcasting. He did this audit on our show, and dude, it hurt. It hurt. Like he was just like your about section's horrible. Your audio's kind of horrible, and that was before I've been working on those things in the background, but I needed somebody to kind of kick me in the butt to get it in the right direction. And after that, he was just like, come up with something, like, here's something like the show about nothing. And we had a guy that wrote a comment. The podcast was called A Film By, and they left us a review, and the title of his review was A Show About Nothing That Makes You Think of Something. And that became our catchphrase from that. And then I was able to come up with the about section just based on who Max and I actually are. So, but Tanner gets the credit for that because he kind of kicked me in the ass to kind of like change what we were doing.
Sorry, I just thought it was brilliant when I read the sarcastic heavy metal coffee loving old dude and his best friend Max, a married 30-something dog and cat owner, discuss a grab bag of topics. You never know what you'll get from episode to episode, and that's part of the fun and charm. It's a podcast about nothing that makes you think of something. Now, I'm sitting there and thinking, Dan, yeah, we got to hire like a marketing department or something. Like we really, because we haven't even nailed the intro down.
But having said that, though, I mean, we are coming up to a year ourselves in about 4 weeks, and I was actually looking forward to this episode, and there's always a period of time when Lou and I always think, what should we talk about this week? What should we talk about this week? But this is, I think, like our 45th episode, so we've actually done 45 random subjects, which I think is, when you look back at it, it's amazing what you do actually do, but you just plow on. Each week is another episode. You just keep on going.
Yeah, we try to record every other week just because it keeps it. We tried every week, and just uploading every week just seemed to become a hassle. And every other week works perfect for us. And we throw the ish in there just because, like, we do a bi-weekly ish, just because some things happen in life sometimes, and you need the ish to kind of save you.
Yeah, I've toyed with the idea of maybe doing it every couple of weeks because, like I said, life, right?
It's like finding that spare couple of hours.
Yeah, and we have repeatedly tried to do this thing where we get a few in the can so that we can keep a schedule going, and that just never worked out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
We did at the start. We had 5 at the start, and now it's literally this is going out in a few
Yeah.
days'
Do you know
time.
what's terrible as well is like me and Dan, we were gonna like name the episodes and like in terms of order, and then because at the beginning we had so many episodes in the bank, we were like, we can't do that because then if we say episode 4 and put it out at a
Oh,
different
yeah,
time,
yeah.
whereas now in reality it only happened for about the first 5 episodes, and now we're like week to week, right? This is what we're talking about. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey, very interesting journey.
We'll come back to your podcast at the end, but I was just also going to say, do you want to give a shout to any socials or where the best place to hear you is?
The preferred platform pretty much is Good Pods. I like using Good Pods. It's easy, but you could hear us on any platform, Spotify, Apple. We've been seeming to get a little bit more of a what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
We get more listen. We've been seeming to get more listens on Apple Podcasts recently, which is kind of cool. So either way, pretty much anywhere we're available. Pretty much anywhere. I made it pretty much. You can get this thing even on YouTube if you wanted to go to our YouTube channel. You can get the audio format of this. So best socials to get in touch with us are Twitter, Instagram. You can email us at ShayneandI@gmail.com. Any questions?
Oh, actually, yeah. I'm going to say we love getting any listener feedback, any emails. That's something we can work with. So if anybody wants to send us anything at
Yeah.
what was our email address again?
ShayneandI@gmail.com.
ShayneandI@gmail.com. Then yeah, do that, please.
It's true, isn't it? Just a bit of feedback. That's all. That's all you want. It's great when you do get a little bit of feedback. It kind of just makes it a bit worthwhile, you know, that you're not just talking out into the void. So
Well, we did discuss in our aliens topic that hopefully we're being picked up by outer space anyway, so we're hoping that we've got a huge following out there somewhere in like
Yeah.
the ether.
I think I did see you tweet just before the episode actually that you are still charting in the UK Apple charts.
It's crazy. I don't know. I kind of think I have an idea of why it's happening. Or we switched from we were using a free podcasting hosting service for a while. We were using Anchor, and then we switched. And the hosting service we use now is in the UK, but I got a better deal. The deal I got from them was,
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's a pretty good deal, and I think we're getting a lot of listeners from them being based in the UK, which is crazy. But yeah, we're charting in like UK and Ireland, which is weird. Ireland.
Wow, damn.
Yeah.
It's funny because we've just changed our platform as well, literally in the last week. So this is the second week on the new platform. We were on Anchor as well. Just weren't getting enough from like the analytics. I think so. Already sort of changing. You can see the sort of more downloads that we were getting before.
That's it. And now it's given me and Dan like ultimate confidence because now we're gunning for Joe Rogan.
Yeah, we are too.
Oh yeah.
We're going for Rogan too.
Hey, Joe Rogan, watch your back.
Watch out. Yeah, team up.
Team up.
One day we'll be in Austin, Texas too. We'll live right next door to them.
Yeah, I think I prefer living in delightful wine country.
Yeah.
Where, yeah.
Me too.
Austin
We'll
gets
be the
hot in
West Coast
summer.
Joe Rogan. We'll be the West Coast Joe Rogan. How about that?
Yeah, the West Coast Joe Rogan. Yeah.
See, more marketing
Yeah,
strategies.
I switched a couple months. I switched probably 4 months back, just because like you said, the analytics weren't really good, and then I was trying to reach out for them for customer service, and it seemed like they used to be really good with customer service, and then all of a sudden over like 6 months, over a year or whatever, it just kind of stopped being as good, and it was just weird. And anyway, it was getting frustrating. There would be times where I'd try to upload, and like they would be like, "Oh, we can't upload on Spotify right now," and it's like, "Whoa, okay, that's weird." And so somebody I knew was using the server that I have now. It's Captivate, and somebody I knew was using that, and they had nothing but glowing things to say about it. And I was like, okay. And when I switched to them, like I've had no issues at all. Like it's been great.
Amazingly, that I managed to transfer it without any issues.
Either can
at all
I.
with
I'm in the
Trust
same
and Can't
boat.
Believe.
I had to I watched a couple of YouTube videos on how to do it, and I was like, okay, here we go.
Well, I was going to say it's funny that we're talking about issues of computers having to switch over because I was going to lead us into our topic.
Nice.
But if you had a final point,
Excellent.
No, all I was saying was for me, I'm making it sound like it was all me, but I actually had a lot of help from Antonio from the Cultworthy. I'm not going to say it was all me. I had a lot
Yeah, I
of
did
help.
that episode with him on the Cult Worthy Classic. and we're planning on doing something else. I got to watch the movie he sent me.
Yeah.
I really like his show. His show's really good.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a good guy.
On the subject, this episode is about Y2K. Now, obviously, I feel like my experiences potentially for some of the older gentlemen than I in the virtual room that we're here in might have a different perspective on Y2K. But just as a brief kind of like preamble into the discussion, Y2K was basically the shorthand term for the year 2000 and is commonly referred to basically like widespread concern that computers in the year 2000 were basically all going to self-destruct and basically the world was going to come to an end. It came about basically because when computer programs were being programmed from the 60s to the 80s, computer engineers used a two-digit code for the year, and the 19 was basically left out. So instead of it being 1970, it basically just read 70. Now, the reason for this was they shortened the date because data storage in computers was costly and took up a lot of space. That's why, obviously, yeah, that's what it was.
Money.
It was all money. So as the year 2000 approached, computer programmers realized that computers might not interpret a 00 as 2000, but instead read it as 1900. And there was basically just widespread panic and fear that it would have an effect on all computers and planes would fall out the sky, that sort of thing. So they basically, people assumed that electronics wouldn't be able to compute dates that didn't begin with 19 because they were basically run on outdated computer systems. And obviously it was coming up to a period of time where lots of things were all run on computers towards the late 90s. You've seen like a huge technological change in which everything was kind of driving towards a digital age. So there were a couple of things specifically that people were worried about. So it's banks, traffic lights, power grids, airports. Microwaves was a funny one to me to read, that people were concerned about their microwaves, televisions. And I read something funny, and I'm going to have to get it in here. And it's doomsdayers believed that even mechanical processes like flushing toilets would be affected by the Y2K
I
bug,
remember that.
which I think is amazing. I think that's amazing.
I was just going to say, Lou, sorry, for me, what you said there, the two that really stand out. So I would have been 22 and I was working my first job, but it was the fear. It was literally planes were going to fall out the sky. You were going to get trapped in lifts. Everything would stop working. It was, because we also, it was called the Millennium bug as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you said that. There was over here anyway, and I've got a couple of stories from some other pods later, which is even more kind of mind blowing. But yeah, it was panic. There was a fear that everything was just
Well,
going to
this
stop.
is the thing. I was actually going to skip over because obviously in the year 2000, I still had a Capri Sun in one hand and an Action Man in the other. So my memory of Y2K is going to be relatively limited because I didn't live through it. So I wanted to kind of ask Dan, Shayne, and Max, what kind of was it like at the time leading up? What was your personal experiences of the kind of fear that surrounded at the time?
You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Oh, I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll totally go first. Okay, so first off, I'll tell you, I was 14. I was in the 8th grade, and I don't know what you guys call that across the pond, but here we call it the 8th grade, and it was honestly stupid. That's all I got.
Is that how you remember it? That it was stupid?
All right, so here's
I can imagine being a kid. I can imagine being a kid back then and thinking that like this is dumb.
All right, so here's what I really remember. I remember people like talking about it. I remember hearing about this, like, oh, everybody's bank account is going to go to zero, and the planes are going to forget how to fly. And
That one still cracks me up.
But the one that people were really freaking out about was like everybody's bank account is going to go to zero, and all their debts are going to go to zero, and the whole financial system is going to fucking implode. And the world will be fucking over.
It'll be dark.
And
That's what they're talking.
Yeah, and I can't remember. I can only remember thinking like, why don't the banks just like print out fucking everybody's balance so that if that happens, they got a record there and they can just go back in and input it.
Because that's actually a pretty good idea for a 14-year-old.
In fact, I was fully aware that just 10 years before that, though there were computers, not everything was run on computers, and I was like, I get how shit could go down, but can't you just for that one day, like if everybody would act as if it was the 80s instead of 1999, you know, we could get through this one fucking day, you know, this one day when it changes from December 31st, 1999 to January 1st, 2000.
See, for me, what I remember going into '99, like I remember very little because '99 was like honestly like a big was pretty hazy. A lot of it's a blackout. I got cleaned up and sober. I got cleaned up in the year 2000, so you could tell how bad of a year '99 was for me. But I remember, I remember like I want to say I was 28, almost 29 at the time, and like when you're 28, 29, most of the people I was hanging out with were like the world's gonna end. Like it wasn't just like the computers are gonna go. It was like people my age were like the world's gonna end, so you might as well just have all the sex you want, all the booze you want, all the way up until all the dope you want, all the way up until January 1st, and then everything it's just done. There were things that would crack me up that people would talk about and be serious about that I could remember thinking it was hysterical. I could remember people, the microwave thing you brought up was a real thing. I can remember people being freaked out that their microwave, because it was the digital clock. They were afraid the digital clock wasn't going to reset on the microwave and the microwave was going to they were going to put it in on January, they're going to put something in the microwave on January 1st and all of a sudden it was just going to blow up on January 1st. Not any other time, just January 1st. I had friends that would stop using bank accounts because they were pretty sure they just withdrew all their money from bank accounts and they put their money in cash. And but I really remember like just people wanting to just get loaded all. I mean, I was one of them. I was like, well, if the world's gonna end, I might as well go out be as messed up as I possibly can. Yeah, exactly.
Have
It
some
wasn't.
fun, yeah.
I mean, honestly, it wasn't too fun. It got pretty dark, but I could remember also. I could remember they had like Woodstock '99 that year, and that turned in. I had to like rewatch these things to kind of like remember how it happened because my memory's bad.
Yeah, remember the mud people?
Yeah,
That's from Woodstock. Oh, you guys.
that was '94, I think.
No, that was
No,
99.
that was '99. But like, I mean, in '99, what else did we let happen? It wasn't just the Millennium. I mean, we let Limp Bizkit become a big band in 1999.
Oh, yeah.
That's just a sign that the world's going to end.
Yeah.
I didn't realise though that Limp Bizkit was a sign of the apocalypse.
The people that I hung out with, they were kind of like, "This is horrible." I liked it, but most of the people, my friends, didn't like it.
One of the things though, and I think it is very much a divide about sort of UK or Europe and America was America is kind of primed for what we call them like the doomsday preppers anyway, aren't they? And I think that must have really played into to kind of these. Now, actually, I've got a story. I think I'll use it now. Lou, you don't mind if I jump into a
No,
to a
go
story?
for it.
I reached out to a couple of people, and we mentioned him. This is Antonio from the Cultworthy. He said he grew up in Utah, and he said one thing you'll find is that members of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints are highly encouraged to have plentiful emergency food supply, just in case there's an apocalypse. Right now, he was renting a room at his best friend's house for the summer before getting a place of his own. During the entirety of 1999, his family, who were very active in the church, were convinced that this was the latter days and that there would be a world-changing event come Y2K. Every day, the mother and father would be bringing in bags of canned goods, gallons of bottled water, military rations, and boxes of cereal. It became a hoarding situation. This was a large house with a vast basement full of bedrooms and closets. Over the year, they filled all the spare bedrooms and closets with dry goods and water bottles. As the month of January came to the close, they came to him one morning and said they needed him to move out. Not because he was a bad tenant, but because they said they needed extra space for more food supply. And when the end comes, he should be with his family. He said he was fine with this as it was getting embarrassing having to sneak girls in the house anyway. So that's an interesting turn there. But as he was moving stuff out, they would immediately fill the empty space with more canned goods and cereal boxes. And like he said, and obviously as we're doing this now, he said, as we know, the end of the world didn't come. For nearly a decade after, though, whenever he would visit his friend's house, there were still piles of cans and dried goods, long since expired. For all I know, over 20 years later, they're still there. And this is to finish with. He says the bright side of this was my friend found stacks of Pepsi 6-packs that had the Phantom Menace adverts on the cans, which fetched a bit of money on eBay. So so it's just Lou, just to kind of back up what you said there. They asked him to move out so they could put more food in to get ready. It's amazing.
It is crazy, isn't it? And the thing is, as well, I guess it maybe became because obviously computers in kind of the grand scheme of things at the time were still relatively new technology, I guess, in terms of the things that they were taking over. And I feel like it was just more a case of not naivety towards these things, but we didn't use computers in the way that we do now and have a PC on in every household and that sort of thing. So I guess the fear, to an extent, was almost a little bit justified. But with all of these things, even as we've probably seen over the last 2 years, people always drive themselves insane. Like, and do you know what I thought about when I read that story about the toilet not flushing and people worrying? I can just imagine that someone woke up on January 1st, the year 2000, and their toilet has just happened to break that day, and they've screamed in their house like, "It's happening! It's happening!"
No. Yeah.
I can remember reading stuff of stuff like that happening. Actually, like people wake up and like their microwave happened to like not be plugged in or something, and they freaked out, running out into the street, thinking the world was going to end, and like their neighbor was like, "No, everything's fine. Like, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
And it was still a time before like there was no there was nothing like social media, so you didn't really know. So if you like woke up the next morning and something was out in your house, you were going to be pretty convinced that shit was going down. You know what I mean? Like you were pretty convinced that like it's ending now. I better do something. And you were talking about Antonio's thing where he's talking about preppers. I had a friend who was like that, and he was like he had taken space in his mom's his mom's extra rooms in her house, and she didn't buy into the world's gonna end in 2000, but he did, and he paid her extra money. He paid her like an extra $50 a month to let him store all this extra canned stuff in her house, and everything he needed for the end of the world. And when it didn't happen, she was like, "You got to take all that stuff out of the room." And he was like, "Oh, okay." And he instead of doing that, he moved out of state. Like he was supposed to move it out on like a Friday instead of moving all the stuff out of that. Like he had built it up to the ceiling. Like, and she was like, it was horrid. Like all the stuff he had, it was just like, he was like, "Okay, yeah, sure. I'll take care of it on like Friday." And she was like, "Okay." And like the next, like that week, that Friday, he happened to move out of state, just like by telling, it was just funny to me. He was telling me the story. He's like, because I didn't want to deal with it. He's like, "I don't want to deal with it. Like, what am I going to do with all that stuff? Like, let her deal with it." Him and his mom didn't have the best relationship. And the fact that he was able to pay her, which explains why she just didn't like give him the room, like just say, "Hey, take the room." And like she was like, "No, you're gonna pay me an extra $55 a month or whatever to store the stuff in that room." And I guess the reason she didn't want it, she wanted it out of the house, was because not only was it taking up too much room, but he never paid her the $55 a month.
And now she's still eating tomato
He
soup.
was under the impression, like I was, he was like, "Why am I going to pay the money if the world's going to end anyway? Like she'll be gone. Like it's not like I'll miss her and everything. Like, but she'll be gone. I'll just move into the house."
Ruthless.
That was his plan.
We don't really do that here, do we,
Well,
Lou?
Do you know what I would say? I would say I thought we didn't, and then COVID came, and then everyone really did. Yeah. So
And
like,
the toilet roll.
oh, the toilet roll was
Baked beans.
the worst thing.
You guys had that same problem, huh?
Oh, the toilet roll was awful. Yeah, baked beans.
Did you guys have people hoarding toilet paper too?
Oh, honestly, it was ridiculous. Like I remember, the thing is, I don't know if I've said this on a podcast before. I've got bowel disease. So obviously, people hoarding toilet paper becomes a problem for me because whilst a normal person might go through 4 in 2 weeks, I go through 4 a day. So when they put limits on it at the supermarkets, I was like, "You don't understand." I was like, "Sell me more toilet roll." I was like, "I can't do this." They were like, "No, 1 per person." So yeah, I really didn't think it would be like that here. And then we saw crisis. I was like, "No, that's it." I was like, if the end of the world did come, that was it. I need to stock up on newspapers or something like that. but yeah.
To go back to something you said though, I think why it did have such a big effect here anyway is like you said, and I was talking to Leo Allen from Voluntary Input about this. Back then, tech was seen as being kept by experts, whereas now everyone's got tech all around their house, and we all know roughly we can all set up a route or do this or do that. But back then, tech was seen as this mystical thing kept by these IT experts.
Yeah.
And if they were saying that, I think it maybe lent a bit more credibility
Well,
to
again,
it.
even leading on from that, so like I did a little bit of reading into companies and research groups and talking about cost to basically fix problems that would arise. So there was a research firm, Gartner, estimated that the global costs to fix the Y2K bug were expected to be between 300 and 600 billion dollars. And then individual companies also basically estimated their own personal costs as companies. So General Motors stated that it would be causing $565 million worth of damages. Citicorp estimated 600 million and MCI stated 400 million. So when you've got huge corporations coming out and thinking, we are in deep shit because this is how much it's going to cost us to fix this, you must have had people driven mad by it, because at the end of the day, like when banks come out and are panicking about it, when big corporations are coming out and panicking about it, and again at a time where you are getting all of your news from newspapers, the news channels, there's not social media that you can reach out to millions of other people potentially, it must have actually been quite a relatively scary thing to have had people talking about in the lead up to.
Well, over here, the government did an 8-page booklet, I think, that went into newspapers for households as well to read, so they could understand what it was and what they could do. So it was down to that level that there was a group, I think, called UK Action 2000, and they sent out leaflets saying your business is in danger. It was, what's the word? There's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, of what could or couldn't happen. Because we still don't really know ultimately what did or didn't happen, because there was a lot of work done. So I think there was. So I've got some examples of things that did happen. So not necessarily saying that Y2K wasn't a thing, but to the extreme levels that were being said, maybe is what was blown up, beyond proportions.
Yeah, I had a friend. He worked at. He had just gotten his. He just became what's it called, an IT tech in '99, and he went right to work, like right out of school, like fresh IT tech. Like they were like, we need you to fix the X, Y, and Z for this thing that's coming. And back then, I can remember it was like right. He got out of school in '98, and I can remember back in the beginning, like the end of '98 to the beginning of '99, he was like he couldn't talk about it. Like he was like, no, I'm doing this secret project. Like they weren't in the beginning of '99. I can remember they weren't making a big deal about it because I don't know why, but I remember talking to him about it, and he was like, I'm on this secret project right now. I can't really talk about it, but let's just say I'm making a butt ton of money right now. And he was like fresh out of school, and he was like he by 6 months into this job he was like able to start his own IT. I mean, later on it folded or whatever, but at that time, being an IT tech, fresh out of school, you were going to get a good amount of money to figure out this Y2K thing and go to work fixing all these computer bugs. And he kind of, and to his credit, he saw that when he went to school to become a computer programmer, he kind of saw something that was going to happen, and everybody was like, "Oh, dude, you're nuts! It's not going to happen." And sure enough, he was like, "Yeah, that's." I made a bunch of money, and I got out. He got out, started his own business. But I can remember having conversations with him, and the part that always cracks me up when I catch up with him these days is how secretive he was about what he was working on. Like he was just like, "I can't talk about it. They'll come for me if I talk about it." I'm like, "Who?" He's like, "Them. Them."
IT techs were like the James Bond of the world, there, weren't
Yeah,
they, of the business world?
man, they were like rock
But
stars, I guess.
yeah, but that's the thing. It's like you talk about money, and Lou, like you were saying as well about money. I've got an article here from 1999, ZNet, and they were saying here basically the cost of mitigation, on average, each small business was allocating $16,500 towards solving the problem, which to a lot of small businesses back then, that's a lot of the
Hell
budget
of a
to
lot
be
of
putting
money.
aside for IT. Yeah, and at the time, yeah, I think, Lou, did you quote Sage? They said 55% of small businesses under 500 employees reported they'd already fixed their Y2K problems, and 38%. So most businesses were on it and doing it. So, that's the thing. Did we mitigate some of the things? Because some of the issues I'll read out after were very minor. But I wonder what would have happened if nothing did happen. Would it, like you said, we just woken up with a hangover after sort of seeing in the Millennium, or would you have not been able to flush the toilet?
Still so ridiculous.
That one cracks me up to this day too. That's always the thing that I wonder too. Is like, did they actually take care of it? Like, was it so? Did they actually take care of it to the point where we woke up on January 1st or whatever, and it was like, oh, see, I know. Look at that. They were lying the whole time. Or was it the opposite of where all these people did a bunch of work to where, which is what I think now years later, I think that a bunch of people did a bunch of work, and it kind of like, I don't think it was going to be as bad as people said, but I think a bunch of people did enough work to where it wasn't even a thing.
Well, there's definitely advantage being taken because the other story I've got, and Lou, this let's see what you think of this. This was Leo saying the thing that stands out for him about Y2K is being too honest and somewhat fearful of getting caught because he said otherwise he could have made a lot of money selling. Basically, what people were doing was selling Y2K system check discs. Basically, they didn't do anything. They actually were selling them to businesses, putting them in, and I think all they would do is say, "Yeah, your system's fine." So they were selling discs to check for compliance against it. And they, I mean, fair play to them for doing it, but they're capitalizing on that fear at the time.
Well, I was actually going to come in and say just the story about the computer programmer straight out of school making money. Was it just a complete scam from computer programmers at the time who were seen as so technically gifted? They were just like, "Oh my god, what happened about computers? We could create a panic, and what we'll do, we'll just walk into businesses, mash keyboards, pretend that we fix things, and then this disaster that never would have happened just won't happen ever."
That's
But surely, well, no, I was going to say, surely all you had to do is put your clock forward to December 31st, 1999, 23:59, right? And just see what happens. Surely that's what you have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That would have shown you what was going to happen.
I can imagine people doing that. My friend, the guy that I had that I know that was in tech, like it was real it was like he went to a legit company. I guess the school he went to hooked him up with an interview and all that stuff. And it was a legit company that was legitimately afraid of Y2K happening. Years later, he talks about it, and he'll even say, "Yeah, it was just a Y2K. We didn't do anything." Like he would go there, sit in front of a computer, stare at a screen, and like look for misplaced dots on the computer. Like if they were a decimal point off or whatever, he had to fix that. Like Office Space, it would be like where they had to fix computer programming. Right, yeah. But he would literally do that and then he would leave. And like he was like, back then though, you couldn't talk about it. Like you didn't want it. They were afraid, like if they mentioned it early on, that people would get into a hysteria like they did. I could remember that it just cracks me up when he would tell me how secretive it was. It's like, no, I can't tell you, man. I can't tell you what I'm doing. Like I have a brother, one of my half brothers used to be in the Navy and he would go on submarines, and like I get why he can't tell me like what he does on a submarine. Like I understand that. Like, but a computer programming guy, like, come on, man.
Silicon Valley just loves their non-disclosure agreements.
There were also stickers, weren't they? I think they were putting on machines saying "Turn your computers off before midnight" on December 31st.
Oh, I remember that. I also remember that was the year Chris Jericho came into the WWE. That's the other random thing I remember. They had this whole Y2J save us thing.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Iconic music as well, where it was just like the Y2J original soundtrack was brilliant. Getting back into wrestling now.
Yeah.
I did think to myself though, so obviously it was a huge issue, but surely you would have known that it wasn't a problem because other people in the world would have experienced it before you because of time difference. So like surely the Australians woke up before everybody here did and were like, "Oh, fuck, mate, nothing's happened." And then all of a sudden, surely everybody should have been fine across the world.
I also remember that I think they actually did broadcast something like that where they'd be like, "Oh, people in Australia just woke up and they're fine."
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm not tripping then.
No, I remember watching the fireworks over Beijing, and they had a great fireworks show, and they're like, "Okay, well, Y2K hits us in 20 hours, but they're fine in China, so don't worry about it."
Do you not think the Australians could have had a bit of fun with us? So when it struck midnight, they could have all started running around and start making the monitors turn off.
That would have been good.
It could have been such a good story, couldn't it?
It's happening.
You've got people lighting fires in the streets and like
Put those discs in the drives now.
If you did restart your computer, you're done. You're done.
If you need the toilet,
It's
go now.
over.
But this is the thing. I found some examples under this article say, did anything happen right? Now, the thing is, you can read this out, and a lot of the things could just be normal tech issues on a lot of them. Now, the key thing here is it said countries such as Italy, Russia, and South Korea did very little to prepare for it, and they had no more problems than the rest of the countries that did, like the US and Europe, the rest of Europe that spent millions. Australia invested millions of dollars preparing for the Y2K bug. Russia invested none. Australia recalled almost all its entire embassy from Russia prior to the 1st of January because of it. What might happen if transportations, networks, etc. broke down, but nothing did. And things like this. In Australia, bus ticket validation machines failed. Well, I'm sure if they could go there today and there'd be bus ticket validation machines that have failed. In the US, over 150 slot machines at racetracks in Delaware failed. I mean, bad if you want to use the slot
Bad that if
machines.
you're in Delaware too.
Spain had a worker summoned to a tribunal on the 3rd of February 1900. South Korea also summoned 170 people to court on the 4th of January 1900. And Italy, sent bills out for 1900. The only one I found for the UK was some credit card transactions failed. I mean, that happens every day for me. So
Yeah.
So again, it's just there just doesn't seem to be. So we had a couple there that were 1900 based, but it just doesn't feel enough to have potentially warranted $600 billion. Did you say, Lou?
Yeah, that's the thing. And do you know what? Just you saying that about the tribunal that went to 1900, could you imagine all of the prisoners whose records, and all of a sudden they've woken up on the 1st of January, they're like, fuck, I've got another 100 years to serve.
That would just be awful.
Yeah, the one I did get here was the US apparently detected missile launches in Russia and they put it down to the Y2K bug, but apparently it was part of a planned. Russia was in a conflict at the time, and it was part of that. But that's when you start getting into, like, there was a Japanese nuclear power facility had some failure. That's then when that all the focus should have been on there, not somebody trying to put a don't restart your computer at this time of night, or your microwave. You might not be able to use your popcorn machine in the morning. The focus should have been on those kind of things. Yeah. But are we not saying, knowing this deep down, and like I said, we can apply this to a lot of things. There's a deep seated fear of people just the unknown, or if they're being told that something cataclysmic is going to happen, there's a lack of control. Do we think that's
I
what
think
it is?
so. And you could even look back. There was another thing that was, what was the one that when the world was going to come to end? That was only a few years ago.
2012, man.
The
The Mayan calendar.
The Mayan calendar,
came
right?
to an end in
Yeah.
2012. Yeah.
But that was it. But compared to like Y2K, like that was there. It seemed like because of social media and because people were able to be like, no, this isn't going to happen, kind of thing, and they had a bunch of research to back up why it wouldn't happen. I think back then in '99, it was more you had this thing of word of mouth, and you could get a story from somebody, and it could be exaggerated times 10. But if it's a believable source, you're gonna kind of believe that. And I just remember around my friend group around that time, like we really believed like shit was gonna end in 2000. Like we really believed it was gonna we believed it was gonna happen, and we all had theories as to why. But I think now it's just I think there's a lot more. It's easier to access information, and you can kind of see if things are going to if it's actually a thing or not.
Yeah.
Like the Mayan thing, you could kind of see that it couldn't happen.
Yeah.
Like,
Also, I think it's just generally speaking easier to believe that some kind of computer glitch which is a technology that exists that you don't fully understand could happen, rather than like Quetzalcoatl coming back to eat the universe. That just makes more sense.
I think nowadays people would have more, less of a complete panic, especially about digital stuff, because I guess computers we're so used to them now, and it's true, the access to information just means that there would just be no kind of like organized panic amongst people. I did actually find a forum thread, and it was people's best stories that they'd heard either personally or kind of from word of mouth of people hunkering down for Y2K. And I will read the best one that I found.
Nice.
So this one, they didn't describe him exactly, but they just gave all of the information. So know a fella locally here who was hunkered down, solar everything. enough batteries to power Cincinnati, enough booze and cigarettes to stockpile to supply 3 infantry brigades, pallets of freeze-dried food, and a pièce de resistance, 100 pairs of male and female hamsters in cages in his basement. And his thinking was that because they breed and give birth so quickly, he would have fresh meat for eternity.
Oh, wow.
Just think, but how
Oh my
much meat are
gosh.
you getting off of a hamster
Wow.
anyway? Like, I just thought to myself, unbelievable. And you know that when he came out, he was like, "Shit, what the fuck do I do with all
That's
these
unbelievable.
hamsters?"
That's crazy.
Like, he's like
Yeah.
taking them back to the pet store to get a refund. They're like, "No, I'm really sorry, sir, but you can't be doing this."
I am going to pick fault with something that you've said, though, and I think you've all said, where you said we weren't going to panic now. Facebook goes down for half hour and the world's up in arms,
That's
and
true,
they
yeah.
don't know what to
Yeah.
do, and they're taking to the
Oh, yeah.
press and hitting these down detector websites. You lose Facebook for half hour, we can't
Yeah, maybe
cope.
it would be more so like that. Imagine if you had like really widespread like social media outages. Like if you had an instance, so Facebook and Instagram are now all both Meta, aren't they? So it's perfectly plausible that if the company as a whole had an issue, both of those sites would go down. Because I think Instagram not long ago had like really huge outages, didn't it? And I think that would be a hugely worrying thing then, probably for people, because it's the access to information, it's the access to people that you know, and all of a sudden it's like that sense of everything's fine kind of being dissipated because you have no access to any of it. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it would be worse now in actual fact then. I retract my previous statement.
Yeah, that might actually be good for the world if the whole world just got a day or two without social media. People might remember, just like that they were human beings. They're not part of this giant global fucking like festival of hate and fear that is so much of social media.
Yeah, deep there for a second.
I have this huge hatred of social media. So at the same time, man, like if some crazy like back in the year 2000, I mean, honestly, what's the worst that could happen? The bank prints out your balance and you print out your balance, just get a receipt from the ATM or the teller the day before, as proof, and you're fine. But now, if some crazy computer shit happened, like somebody could hack into my car and drive it into a gas station if they
Yeah.
wanted, and my phone knows what my face looks like, and it could deep fake me if it wanted to, because I believe that it is always filming me, and all this like technology is crazy and scary now, and the Chinese government knows where you are at any given moment because of their freaking Skynet thing. And why would they name it Skynet? That's the bad guy from Terminator that destroys humanity. And so technology is fucking terrifying now. Back in the year 2000, it was just like, oh, your bank balance might get fucked up. Fucking just get a copy. Get paper, man. Nowadays, paper is not going to save you.
So maybe Terminator is actually a true movie then.
Yeah, or maybe like Y2K actually happened. The world ended. We all died, and we're in the Matrix right now.
That's what that guy.
Whoa.
That's what that guy Andrew Tate says.
Whoa, yeah, we're in the Matrix.
We talked about conspiracy about this, where the world ended in
Oh,
2012
okay.
Yeah,
when the
yeah.
Hadron Collider. So yeah, we're just a bit late. But the problem with the Terminator is, does the Terminator have the Y2K bug though? That would have been the problem. Would he have been shut down? But you know, we've got another one on the way. There's
Oh, I haven't
another
heard.
Uh-oh.
issue
Is
coming
there?
up in
Which one's
2038.
that?
It's called the 2038 problem. So Y2K38. So it's in Unix systems apparently. Yeah, Unix became the default in the 70s, or an operating system in the 70s. The way Unix keeps the time is through, I won't go into all the complicated stuff because I don't understand it, but it's a 32-bit counting system which has been counting forward from 0000 UTC from January the 1st, 1970. I think it can go up to 2 billion seconds either way, which would basically take us up to 3:14 a.m. on the 19th of January 2038, and it will then start to count on the negative scale. So they're saying that we've got potentially another similar thing that could happen in 2038. But as you were both saying now, we're a lot more connected to tech now. So you've got GPS system, braking systems, traction control in cars
Yeah.
alone.
See, but this is the thing. That one is going to be when artificial intelligence is on the up, and then we're going to have this huge technological crash, and then the AI is going to take over. That's what that one's going to be. It's going to be like iRobot, but real life.
That's
Yeah,
the
I can see
Terminator
that. I
one
can see
or
that. I
whatever,
can see
yeah.
that one happening. That and the Terminator one.
Yeah.
I can see both
Yeah,
of those
yeah.
things happening.
All of a sudden,
So-
all the Teslas are just veering off the roads because they're like, "Fuck these people."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Teslas are talking to you now. Get out of the car.
Man, I'll tell you something. I can't wait till I have a self-driving car.
Self-driving cars freak me out.
I know it freaks me out too, but at the same time, like the dream is I can get. And I know this is bad. I know this is wrong, but the dream is that I can get a little more sleep on my way to work. You know, that kind of stuff.
You could eat some cookie dough while you're driving.
Yeah, I wonder what happens when they become such a thing that laws are relaxed to say, yeah, at this point, self-driving cars are so good you can just sleep on your journey. Because at some point, you would expect that has to happen if self-driving cars become so the norm.
I actually have a theory about that. Yeah.
Oh, go on then.
I actually have a theory about that. And my theory is that self-driving cars already are better drivers than human beings in general, even the best driving human being. And people are just scared of the new technology. And that's it. That's the whole fucking thing. That's it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I disagree. I've seen self-driving cars go on little rampages, like not stop in time. Like I've seen some things on
Yeah,
video.
and I've never seen a human driver.
I'm not saying that humans are any better. I'm just saying that you know what, that self-driving cars aren't the be-all and end-all. Maybe it's because I'm old.
But yeah, also, yeah, they're not the be-all and end-all. I just think self-driving cars are better than human-driven cars. I was once in a human-driven car, did a full 360 in its lane. That's it. That's the whole story. We did a 360 in our lane.
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, it was kind of scary.
The thing is, I love
I do too.
driving. I just don't like other human drivers. It's the other human drivers that annoy me. That's the problem.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That's the thing that annoys me. I was just annoyed last night. I couldn't figure out somebody was in the fast lane. This one always kills me. Right here in the States, it's like you have your fast lane, your middle lane, and your slow lane. And I always get. I mean, it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm coming home from work, and it's like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm the only one in the fast lane, and I'm cruising along, and all of a sudden this guy's in the fast lane, and we come to a bottleneck section on the freeway, and this guy's in the fast lane doing like 45 miles an hour, and like I can't get around him because we're in a bottleneck. Even at 10 o'clock at night, when you come to this one section of road, it just kind of bottlenecks, and it's going to be backed up for a little bit. There's nobody in front of him. There's nobody like reason to be freaked out. So I finally was able to pass this guy. And this is what the part about people that drive that irritates me. I go to pass him, and this guy is in the fast lane on his phone. Like he's literally looking at his phone as he's driving in the fast lane. And I'm like a no looking at my phone kind of guy when I drive. I don't look at it. I may select some music on it, but I pay full attention to what's going on around me. And it annoys me to no end when I see somebody messing around on their phone as they're driving.
You know what doesn't mess around on its phone while it's driving? Self-driving cars. Yeah.
See, when you said he was going that fast in the slow lane, I thought it could only be one of two things: either drunk or texting. Because I feel like that's the only reason people drive that slow on motorways and freeways, surely.
And it happens a lot. I think it happens a lot more out here than it does. Especially in California, it happens a lot. I see it a lot more, at least. Like I see people like, it's like, dude, how are you paying attention to the road? Like, I want to concentrate on where I'm going, and like I want to make sure people around me are safe. Like, and I gotta avoid people like you that are on their phone looking at whatever it is you could like look at social media when you get to where you're going.
Yeah,
Max.
Or get a self-driving car.
Or get a self-driving car.
Yeah, then you don't have to worry about that.
You could just be on your phone the whole time.
Yeah, you could be on your phone the whole time and perfectly safe because it's going to drive better than you if you were, stone cold sober and perfectly focused.
So there
Right
you go.
now,
Yeah.
we have got an issue with self-driving cars in the UK because at the minute the Tesla auto drives work lovely in the States, from what I understand. But British roads are not built like American roads. There are so many things to avoid. They're really poorly marked. So like A roads and like country roads just don't have any markings whatsoever. And even motorways in this country are really poorly marked. So you've seen like instances where self-driving cars don't see, because here a lot of cars like park on the curb or on like the sidewalk up against it. And self-driving cars haven't got the technology yet that identifies those cars, so they will just drive straight into them. So we've just got British roads that just don't accommodate it at the
See,
minute
I'm not
because
just making
nothing
up
is
that I
marked
saw it
correctly.
somewhere. It's actually happening.
Okay, all right, I'll give you that.
See, whereas
I'll
you've
give you
got
that,
like
yeah.
lovely, beautiful, open, wide roads
See,
that are
I
well
didn't just make
marked,
it up,
yeah,
Max. It's
long,
actually happening.
smooth.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, yeah, British self-driving cars, the roads are unfortunately too stupid for them at the minute.
Well, we've got our little robotic food delivery things that keep getting stuck in like potholes on pavements and stuff, don't we? So
Yeah, those robots that deliver
little
food. They're in Milton Keynes, I think, predominantly. Like one of them, I think, got hit by a car I saw online because it crossed the road when it shouldn't have done.
See, that's the other thing I think I'd be more okay with. For some reason, I have a real, I don't know. It's not a big issue, but I have a big phobia of people delivering my food. Like sometimes, because I worked in restaurants for a long time, and because I worked, like I know kind of what people would do when they were kind of pissed off at other people that would come into the like I know what people did to people's food. I've seen it. You know what I mean? And I'm always paranoid a little bit, not like to the effect that I won't buy delivery options, but I'm a little paranoid. I always got to check. Like if I get something delivered to me, I always got to check and see if it's been messed with in any kind of way. And I would actually feel a little better with a robot delivering my food than a human because I would think that the robot wouldn't necessarily want to mess with your food.
Yeah, a robot's not going to dip its balls in your sauce.
Exactly.
The robot's also not asking for a tip when he turns up at your fucking house either.
Yeah, yeah. No awkward
Yeah,
conversations with the
exactly.
robot. Yeah.
Exactly.
Again, I feel like the UK is not really set up for the technology wave that's actually coming and the one that's here and now. Although I think I've linked this in a couple of other episodes. Do you guys know who CGP Grey is?
No.
Nope.
There's a video on YouTube and it's called Humans Need Not Apply. And it's a brilliant video which just illustrates how basically technology will just automate all of the things that we think won't be automated in life. And you look at it and you think, you know what? Yeah, the world is actually going to go to a dangerous place where everything that we do, there's just going to be no need for us. So I think that's my big fear moving forwards is the fact of it's not going to be a case of robot delivery drivers. It's going to be the robots living in the houses as people eventually at some point. That's like my big next to Y2K fear.
Yeah, and I am going to add to this little bit, and I'm going to say I'm going to bring in another sci-fi end of the world apocalyptic thing. Y'all are familiar with the book Dune, recently made into a movie starring Timothy Chalamet. Anyway, so uh, so in Dune, the robots became, our luxury slaves, and they did everything for us, and humans were just, useless blobs that had robots do everything for them until they revolted. So that's coming too. Yeah, good to know.
That's what I was gonna. That's what I was gonna mention
Yeah,
too.
we got Matrix, we got the Terminator, we got iRobot, we got Dune. We're good, man.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I think my end of the world scenario with that as well is I've always thought that Wall-E is a really good end film for like the end of the world scenario. Do you know, where like humans are living in space and we've all just got everything automated for us. We don't know what walking is anymore because nobody's needed to do it in 20 years. I always think that's one of the most realistic end of the world films that I've seen.
I totally, yeah.
Dan, have you got any ideas on what your end of the world situation when it came to computers would be? What would be like your most disastrous situation?
No, I just think the most valid way of things being is that we are just going to become so, what's the word? We're just not going to be able to do anything for ourselves anymore. That people, we're just going to become
Yeah,
so
that's what I think
reliant
too.
on tech that when something does inevitably break, we're doomed because nobody knows how to do anything anymore. That's what it is. It's a combination of everything. Throw in a little bit of Y2K maybe, but yeah, when that time comes, people just don't know what to do
Yeah, the
anymore.
mechanical toilets are going to break, and then all of a sudden it won't be fixed, not because it's any kind of Y2K issue, because nobody at that point knows how to fix the broken toilet.
But even go back to say something what I think Max, were you saying it, Max, where you say, oh, why don't people like the banks print off balances the day before? Everything now is done on tech. I don't think people know how to do things back on pen and paper anymore. Like, if imagine if we lost the internet and all technology tomorrow, how would a lot of businesses cope? They wouldn't know how to do
Yeah.
it.
Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. All the grandparents are going to have to teach
The
the
kids
kids
how to do
how
stuff.
to do stuff. Yeah, instead of the other way around.
No, I was just gonna say, my dad would always say, like when computers are coming, my dad would always say, "Oh, but we used to do it before on paper," and it's like, but now we are so far the other side now. We haven't done anything manually. Tech drives everything. That I don't know how you can unpick tech from us anymore, or from
Yeah, I
society.
agree. I was, you were bringing that up, and I was thinking, my buddy's kid is really wrapped up into tech, and it's so like so to the point where like she doesn't know, she's like in eighth grade or whatever, and they haven't even taught her how to do, they don't even teach them how to do like they teach them more computer stuff than like writing cursive or something like that. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like she doesn't even like, I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
her dad explaining to me like he wrote her name in cursive, and she was like, "What's that?" And like her dad, like
Right.
my friend showed his daughter how to do cursive, and her friends were like totally blown away by it. But like she was like, I remember when she was younger, like she was like, I had no idea what cursive was. And that's like, to me, that's another tech thing where it's like people are so used to tech, like cursive is no longer a thing.
Yeah, I don't think they teach it in school anymore.
I don't think so either.
Life skills. We don't learn life skills, or schools. They don't teach enough about modern
Yeah,
life.
I think that's a thing we got when we were, at least when I could remember when I was in school. Like, you got your home ec, you got your like, if you wanted to learn auto shop, you could learn auto shop, or you could learn wood or whatever. And like back then, you thought that's where like all the kids that had bad behaviors went, but really what it was teaching you back then was life skills. Like you need to learn how to put oil in your car. And it's like people are so dependent now. Like I know people that don't know how to change their oil, and it blows me away. Like, how do you not know how to change your oil?
Robots do that now.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. They're like negating the need to do oil changes and that sort of thing. I did actually see, this is so the most off topic thing in the world. I did see a prank where a guy converted a Tesla back into a, I'll say, gas powered car, and then took it to a
Oh
dealership
wow.
and said, "Hi, my car needs an oil change." And they were like, "It doesn't need an oil change. It's an electric car. What are you talking about?" He was like, "No, no, it does. Like I put fuel in it and everything." They were like, and they were looking at him like he was an utter psychopath. And then they went and looked under it, and they see this like fuel engine in it, and they're like, "What the fuck has somebody done to this Tesla?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, you do need an oil change." He was just like, "Fair enough, we'll get it done for you." It was just so funny. It was like the mechanic looking at this guy like, "Are you an utter moron? How have you existed this far in life without help?" But yeah, hilarious prank. I'll have to get Dan to link it to you. It was brilliant. So should we have like a final question for everybody? So how scary was Y2K from a practical perspective out of 10?
For me, like I don't know, man. I could remember it being like, I want to say it was like a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. It was like a 6. Like you were pretty petrified that it was going to happen, but at the same time, like you didn't care. At least that's what I remember. That's my take.
Accepting your fate.
Yeah.
And Max?
it was a 2 because I didn't understand why people wouldn't just print shit out, like for one day, behave as if your computer might not work. I just didn't get it.
You're also 14.
I was 14, but still, it seemed like a pretty simple solution.
See, if they'd have put you in
Love it.
charge,
Just print
yeah, they
shit
would have
out.
never have spent these
I love it.
$400 billion
Seriously.
on fixing shit. It just would have been extra printing cost. And Dan?
Well, I was just gonna say, if this happened now, Max, you'd be making T-shirts with the slogan "Just print shit out," and you'd make a fortune selling that.
just, just print
You'd
shit
make a
out. Yeah,
fortune.
I would. I'd sell on my Instagram, man.
For me, I'm gonna say similar to Max. Actually, from a personal level, I wasn't overly worried about it because I was 22. I think I was just in a job. So from me, it was like it'd be like a 2 or a 3. From what I saw in the press, that was like an 8 or a 9. Let's say that.
Yeah, from what I've seen, I feel like the general perspective was that the lead up was probably like a 9 or a 10 for the media hype. But then most people kind of just got on with it, and there was the odd occasion of people prepping. I would be unable, unfortunately, to give you a score for me because, like I said at the beginning of this episode, I was still clutching a Capri Sun and an Action Man. But I feel like it would have been a cool thing to have experienced. I feel like that's what's the one thing that I'd like to go back at as an adult when we talked about our time travel episode and experience again as an adult to see how truly horrifying it was or just wasn't. Again, just to follow up, Shayne and Max, where can we find your podcast for all of the people listening at home?
For all the people listening home, you can find our podcast wherever you download podcasts. We're available everywhere.
On all major platforms. Dan, I've got to do the outro as well, so I actually haven't practiced it in a while, and I'm likely going to fuck it up. But before we do that, I just want to say a very big thank you to Shayne and Max for coming on. There's been a little bit of a delay, so Dan's going to have a terrible time editing this episode. It's going to be great. If this comes out
Good
really
luck.
smooth, I'm going to be looking at Dan like one of those computer geniuses, like you were looking at these people that were fixing the Y2K problems. So just to leave everybody with this. We know there's many podcasts from which you can choose, and we thank you for listening to Casting Views.